Right, as it was in bits, I thought we might have a look at this today. It's a Intel iPDS-100. It's basically a portable MDS. Not really sure how portable it is. You can carry it. It's not that light. They say sort of in its base form as it is here, it's 27 pounds. So I don't suppose you want to carry it very far, but it's probably easier than carrying a full MDS system. Despite its size, I mean, it's not a bad little system. It's got 64k of RAM in it, 2k of ROM, it's got a single 640k floppy, and it was capable of either running ISIS PDS, which was a version of ISIS, as we've seen on the MDS-800, or CPM, so fairly versatile little system. Not sure of the date. There's no dates on the system here. I was sort of thinking back, and the last time I used one of these was in 1984, I think. So it's round about the mid-80s, I guess. Quite an expandable system. Unfortunately, this particular system hasn't got any of the expansion, so you're going to have to sort of imagine some of the parts, I'm afraid. I'll try and sort of intersperse some pictures so you can see what the various options were. But let's just have a look at it as it stands at the moment. We've got two 8085s. This is actually the system processor itself. And this 8085 here controls the CRT and the keyboard. We've got 64k of RAM down the bottom here. This little thing here is the reset module, and this is the data separator for the floppy. So that's more or less what's in here. Got a little buzzer there. That's the control for the brightness on the CRT. Power coming in on the left hand side here. Right, so before we start turning it round, I'll point out where all the add-on parts went. The 100 in the description refers to the sort of component number. This was component 100, which was the base system, and it sort of went up from there. So the first option was 110, and that was the optional processor module. That plugged in here, and the cable sort of flipped over the top, and the board was on the back here. That was exactly the same as what they call the base processor, which is more or less what this board is here. I mean, obviously that's the only board that's in this machine. So it had an 8085, 64k of RAM again. The second option was the multi-module adapter, which accepted Intel multi-modules from the time, and that plugged into this socket here, and there was another cable that flipped over the top, and the multi-module adapter fitted on the back. The multi-module accepted a few things. I think they had a serial module and a parallel module, but probably the most common thing that you'd find was 128k bubble memories. You could actually fit two on the multi-module adapter, and they were quite well in a portable system like this. They were quite useful because they were the sort of the solid state disk of the day, and you could actually boot the system off one of the bubble memories. So quite handy, really. Not a lot of capacity, but at least it was sort of it was in the system, and it was sort of solid state. So even if you were sort of bashing this around in the car, obviously that would still survive. So we had those ones. What was the next module? The next option was 130, and that was the add-on floppy. They were identical to the internal one. We'll have a look at those in a minute when I've got this out of the way, but it was in a little sort of pod all of its own, and there was only one floppy drive per pod, and they were full height, so not exactly space saving. The final option was option 140, and that was for the plug-in module, and the plug-in module went in this little gap here. Let me just slide this over a bit so you can see it. There we go. If it's all in one piece, which obviously this one isn't at the moment, so you can get that in the right place, you have this little door. So the door opens as here, and your module sort of plugs in. Now when you've got all the bits, a board bolts across here, and that has the socket for the plug-in module. The plug-in module goes into this socket here. Right, now the plug-in modules, I think the only plug-in module I've ever used was a EEPROM programmer. They were fairly common, but the most common you'll see if you see these for sale is the EMV51. Intel for some reason rebranded their in-circuit emulator systems on this particular system, and they call them emulator vehicles. That's where the EMV bit comes from. The 51 came from the 8051 microcontroller, and there was an EMV for the 8088 and the 8044, and apparently there was a third party one for the 8085 as well, and there was a couple of legacy in-circuit emulators for the 8042 and the 8049. I think that's the, the full list of bits. Right, okay, let's have a little look around the rest of the system now, and then we'll have a look at the floppy. So, let me just tuck that in there so it doesn't fall on the floor. Okay. Right, let's turn this round. Right, this is, it's a bit close, isn't it? Let's move the camera back a bit. Right, here we go. Right, that's the back. So we've got serial port here, parallel port, typical sort of Centronics. We've got 36-way floppy port. That's plugged into the external floppy modules. We've got over here, we've got power switch, fuse, mains input obviously, and over here we've got the contrast control for the CRT. Right, let's go around a little bit further. Right, there we go. Right, go in a little bit further. Right, power supply. Much simpler than the MDS. We've just got +5, plus or minus 12, and it's switch mode in this system as well. So it's got a lot. That made it a lot lighter, which is good. Final bit. Let's just tilt this up a little bit so you can see it properly. Okay, get the camera up. Right, this is a 19-inch CRT. You see the control board for it here. Okay. Right, turn it around again. Put its little foot up. Oh, right, that's it. Right, let's move back a little bit so you can see what's going on. Right, there we go. Right, so what makes it portable is that that handle. So it's not even padded, so a bit uncomfortable to carry. Keyboard is under here, so if we pop that down, there we go, there's the keyboard, and our 9-inch CRT. This is obviously where the floppy goes. Right, let me shift this out of the way and I'll show you the floppy. Right, that's the floppy drive for it, full height, 5 1/4. It's a bit weird, this drive actually. This must have been the sort of last hooray for non-standard floppy drives, I think, because if you look underneath, see it's actually got a direct drive motor, no belt. And being that this is sort of mid-80s, this was just when the sort of IBM PC came out, which obviously was the motivation for the EMV 8088, I guess. This drive, for some bizarre reason, is 720k, which was never ever a PC supported size, not in a 5 1/4 anyway. The only plus point, of course, is that you can actually use a PC type 3.5 inch drive on this system, which is quite useful. So this is exactly what the pods look like as well. They were quite large. I'll show you a little picture, but yeah, that's what the floppies look like. As I said, you can use a standard PC floppy. The only snag is that this drive here has got drive select jumpers on it. Oops, let's get that in shot there. This has got drive select jumpers on it, whereas of course the PC style disc hasn't. PC drives are meant to be sort of idiot proof and they're all set to drive select 1, so you do need to fiddle things a little bit. If I've got a little fiddled cable in here and all I've done, I'll get that close into the camera, I've just twisted over 9, 10, 11, 12, see that little twist in the cable there, and what that does, that just flips over DS1 and DS0, so when you plug this in, this actually comes up as drive 0, obviously otherwise the machine won't boot. We'll have a look at that in a minute. Right, so I think that's more or less the tour. Any other thing that might be interesting, if I fold that in there, I'm not sure if I can get it, hopefully I can get it in shot. Let's put the lid back on. Right, that's the lid. It's got this quite interesting little feature here. It's got this little cubby hole in the top of it. It's quite deep, look. It completely disappears in there. The idea is that you could put your prom programmer in there, or one of your emulation tools. So that's quite cute. The other thing just to note, if you're taking one of these apart, these little things here are like sort of snap-in connector things. Let's see if I can get that in there for you so you can see. You can probably see that little thing there. It's like a little ball, and that snaps in when you push the lid down. So when you take the lid off, you take out the feet on the back, and then you'll have to give it a bit of a tug to release it from these little ball and socket joints. Right, I suppose the obvious question is, why have I got it in bits? Couple of reasons actually. Despite the previous owner actually spending a fair bit of time getting this thing working, as is the like of all vintage equipment, you know, things sort of go wrong on a regular basis. When I got it, it was okay-ish, and then gradually the booting became more and more erratic. Luckily, Intel have put these little 4 LEDs in here which show you the status of the first part of the boot process, and the first LED is the optional processor, then the power supply, then the main processor, and finally the CRT keyboard. What was happening when you switched it on, all these LEDs were just on permanently. If they're on, that means there's a fault, other than the power supply one, which always stays on. The fault in the manual that this points to is the main processor board, which obviously encompasses this entire board. I couldn't obviously swap that out, but what I thought I might as well do, I'll change the 8085 just on the off chance, which is this one here. and that did actually fix the problem, which was quite handy. I'll power it on quickly. If you look at the LEDs, you should see the flash sequence, and we should be just left with one single LED on. I'll shut off the main lighting so it's a little bit clearer. Okay, so just keep your eye on the LEDs down the bottom here. Here we go. There we go. So you notice now all we've got on is the power LED, and that's exactly how it should be. So what I'll do, I'll put the floppy drive back in, just show you it booting, and then I'll show you the second problem. Okay, just for the sake of completeness, this is what it looks like when the floppy's back in. The floppy's housed in this sort of perforated metal cage here. It takes up a fair bit of room, and obviously the access to the board is fairly limited at this point. If you don't want to take the floppy out, the panel that the baseboard's connected to here, there's 4 screws. You can take those out and then lift the whole lot out. It just depends how you want to get to the board, really. I had to take the floppy out for another reason, so that's why I had it out, and that made it fairly easy for me to get to the main board. Right, let me reposition the camera and we'll see if we can get it to boot. Right, we're all ready to go. The recommended way to power it up is to leave the floppy door open and power the machine up first. So we'll do that. So power on. Take a little while for the tube to warm up, obviously. Right, minute. Right, it's just coming up now. You can see that A is actually part of the Bootup diagnostics. That's not just a sort of an artifact. And it's saying no boot device because there's no floppy in. So we put the floppy in. There we go. Press the reset button, and hopefully it'll boot. Oh, it's looking hopeful. And there you go, it's booted CPM. And interesting thing, if you can read it or not, it actually says bubbles ENF. So if you add bubble memory in it, they'd come up as driver ENF, and the other drivers would obviously be external floppies. Can't give you much of a demo because that leads to the second problem. Not much of the keyboard works. I might be able to get a directory up, so we go. Oh, there we go, we've got an eye. There we go. And I think we might be able to get into DDT. Let's try that. Oh, we can get a T. There we go. So there you go. I repaired a few of the keys some time ago, actually, just to see if it was a lasting fix, and it just seems to be oxidation on the actual key contacts. I did the reset button, and that's really good now. The reset button's almost instantaneous. So hopefully in the next video we'll try and fix the keyboard. Alright, so I hope you enjoyed the video. If you did, leave me a thumbs up, and I shall see you next time.